Got news for you. You're not shadow banned. Your content just sucks. A lot of businesses don't know what their place is on TikTok and Instagram, and they're forcing their social media teams to do really only sales-focused content, and it's setting the team up to fail. You don't have a social media strategy, and because you have no strategy, it's not effective. And it's not going to work because you have to understand why people want to be on socials in the first place.
I think like going to first principles, when people use the word plan, they don't really get it. So they say, okay, what is your social media plan? And then you get like an agency who comes in and goes, here are some profiles, here are some themes, here are some ads. But what is the essence of your plan? Like, what is the goal that you want to achieve? What is the desired end state? Like, I don't think people are kind of doing coordinated plans where they understand that there can be multiple aims that are articulated on the social digital marketing world, and they don't know how to synchronize them to be effective.
I don't know if that's exactly what's happened. It depends on the size of the business. Like, I think the medium to big size companies, their socials are dictated by a product that's launching. So whenever their fiscal year starts, they tend to map out when products are being launched, and that entire month of strategy or quarter of strategy in quotations for socials is all of the content has to basically go around a product launch. And the problem is that sales is at the center point. So because the sale is at the center point of the social media plan, none of the content is engaging or effective. And there is no strategy to what you want your socials to achieve, because nobody wants to follow a business account that's just straight ads.
Well, I don't even think they talk about what do we want from our social media campaign. Do we want sales? If it's sales only, you have to have one type of plan and strategy. If we want brand recognition, it's different, right? And what I think people need to do, and it's high-level planning, we used to do it in the military, we'd have something called a synchronization matrix or table. And so you'd say, okay, for revenue generation, we need to do X, Y, Z. For brand building, we need to do this. And for engagement and community building, we need to do entertainment and education. And so, but I've never seen a company that actually has an impressive plan that kind of understands those three components and knows how to synchronize them into a plan.
Well, you bring up a good point. It's even a different way of looking at it. Not all social media posts should be treated equally. And if you have to do sales-focused content, which I don't agree with, it shouldn't be benchmarked or graded in the same way that brand awareness or content that's designed to build a community or be engaging should. And that's an issue with brands, is they can decide to or to not listen to stop selling on social media because nobody wants to be sold to on socials. But there's a reality that a lot of these public companies are going to have to do some sales focused content because they've got shareholders and they're a public company, and there's only so much that they're going to accept by way of our expertise. But once that's in its own box, the way that the CEO or the CMO wants the social team to present its metrics is holistically. Like, they want the whole report for the month or the whole report for the quarter. And the report for the quarter won't show much growth because they're looking at all of the posts as one, opposed to the engagement posts individually, opposed to like engagement in siloed versus the sales focused content. And why that's important outside of just it makes more sense that content that's designed to sell should have a different benchmark. The KPI that I like to use for sales-focused content is brand awareness, so reach and impressions. How many people is this content piece reaching? Your community content should be rated off of engagement. So likes, shares, saves, DMs, and messages. So the metric is different, and it should be rated differently because it can tell you which of your sales-focused content performed better in relation to the other sales-focused content, as well as the engaging style content.
And what's missing is this iterative loop learning, which is a fancy word for saying you have to kind of be able to intelligently process what's happening, refactor it into your plan, and adjust your plan. And our expert in studio and in all things social is Jasmine, who sits at the end, and she was showing us some tools that we use. if you're trying to build community engagement and you have a certain amount of followers, she's like, look what I can do on TikTok. I can see what all of your followers are searching.
Yeah.
And then that allows you to iteratively loop that back into your plan and now create content that reflects what your followers are searching to bring more people in. We don't have that level of thinking going on in 19 out of 20 businesses that we engage in.
True, but that app is not as easy for a business. Mm-hmm. That's better for like a personal brand. Mm-hmm. Because if you think of Walmart, you know, there's fewer people searching for things that, I mean, I guess if it's product
No, I think it's very relevant. Like, I'm going to have to disagree with you there, Ms. Moore, because the algorithm is feeding people your content based on what they're searching. So I guess what I'm suggesting is 2 or 3 levels deeper questioning to understand your community engagement platform. Yeah. Like we've worked with a couple companies that are like, oh, here's our target market, Peter, who's a fan of jazz and long walks on the beach. Like it's not thoughtful. And your point earlier I thought was really good. And you've worked with this with it where it's like, have a 6-month plan, have 3 different metrics of what you want to do. And then what you want to do is fine tune the dials to have them support them. Because what you said, the most powerful thing we had in the meeting last week was, you're just telling the CEO, like, you ruined your social media. You ruined 3 years of social media by trying to force feed sales stuff on your platform.
Oh my God, yeah. Let's get to that in a second because I think that's a whole other like can of worms. But 2 things to what you just said. The level of thinking, that what I find is so interesting is it's starting to change. But the level of focus and attention that businesses put on social shifted away from it being strategic. And there's so many tools that would make sense for the brand to own its category if it took a more personalized or just a personal approach to social media where they're actually connecting with their community. So there's different sizes of businesses that would fit into different strategies. And for big faceless corporations like the big boys, they should be seeing their socials in lieu of a website. Mm-hmm. Because you really don't go to like a major player's website unless you're like Amazon e-com. Mm-hmm. Like that's not really their website.
You don't go to Red Bull's website.
No.
Right? But Red Bull's Instagram is amazing.
And people don't click, like they scroll. So you want that like scannability of when you scroll on their socials to really take away what your USP is.
Hey, sorry, I know I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was just thinking, because when I look on Instagram, I was wondering from an aesthetic perspective, if Instagram is your website, shouldn't like the blocks of content be a little bit more aesthetically accessible, as opposed to just looking like the same visuals, but it's hard to figure out, it's hard to find stuff on a person's Instagram.
What do you mean?
So like if I go on a company's Instagram, but I want to learn about the company, like it's not really easy to learn about the company. Like if it's going to be the website, right? Because you're just seeing a bunch of different posts.
But it depends what the company is. Like if it's Red Bull, like how much do you really have to tell me? Like it's just that Red Bull gives you wings. Like it gives you energy. It satisfies that moment in your life of why you'd want an energy drink. So when you scan its Instagram page, like they can tell you things like it doesn't have to be heavily graphic focused, but they can have one post every 25 that just has in bold like since 1982, and then every other post is extreme sports or it's people using the product in action. That's all that Red Bull needs as a website, right? And I've done a few audits for companies that are kind of in the mid-range stage, and they're like, our socials aren't growing. I'm like, well, what are you trying to achieve? Is your socials, are they not growing, but your business sales are growing? Is your sales not growing, but your social platform is growing? Like, it's not all mutually exclusive. Like, you need to look at each, because your sales can be growing, but your growth isn't growing because they see your socials as your secondary website. So it's where people go to validate. Like there's many businesses I scan that I won't ever follow. And that's usually the first place I go is on Instagram to get a secondary feel for a brand, because it's more than just a flat website. Like I can see through 2 or 3 passes what the brand is all about.
That's such a good point. And I just realized it listening to you is I don't I don't follow pages.
No.
Like, I just don't follow pages.
No.
Right? So, but I often look at Instagram pages and make buying decisions based on it. So if people are just telling you on followers, it's a different level of commitment to follow as opposed to check it out and then make a buying decision.
And it's so I work with a really big fashion brand, and they have two very different strategies. Their Instagram is very like curated. It's very like art director focused. It's really communicating to an artistic community where they see their Instagram as a source of inspiration within fashion, but their actual target market customer who's buying it is in no way high fashion. A good comparison would be like a Carhartt or a Rude. Like, these brands on Instagram are very curated as a source of inspiration for art directors and art creators, and it's not necessarily the same person who's wearing it in real life. So that's also where Instagram is interesting, because these brands are heavily focused on having growth numbers on Instagram because they want to stay more relevant within the zeitgeist. That's a strategy, and that's a strategy in fashion, but that might not work as a product company. So this is all to say that there's not one size fits all approach to socials, and to do socials well has to make sense for your brand, business, and goals.
The way we're talking about it, even, and as I'm thinking about it, having done a lot of planning, operational planning, strategic planning in the past, a social media plan is actually an incredibly complex thing.
It is.
Like, when you think about it, like the layers we're getting at,
Yes.
It's not just like, hey, let's get some graphic people to be all funky and be like, do this cute stuff that's politically correct, or just post a burrito that's not like, it actually requires a high level of thinking for it to really perform. But if you can get that high level of thinking and efficient execution, you can really synergize and get some great results.
It's actually funny because when I find I'm the most impressed by the response from brands that I think would get it the most. And when I do social strategy meetings with them, their response is often, this is like therapy, because you're so in the weeds of overcomplicating, and it's so valuable to a business, but it almost gets like written off like it's nothing, but it's really everything. But it's like weird to quantify the level of thinking that needs to be brought in to separate you from the rest.
Especially in a corporate world, because there's no one person who can question.
No.
So it's kind of like Elon Musk, when he tells a story when he was building his car, he was able to remove like 27 parts of a car that everybody thought were necessary.
Because nobody asked.
Because when he would ask engineering, why is that there? And they would say, oh, safety says it. Then he'd go over to safety and they'd be, why is that? And they say, engineering says it. And he's like, so both of you say it's not necessary. Yeah, gone. But in these kind of marketing departments, they're like, oh, we have to do this. We have to do this. And then when we come in and say, you don't have to do this, they're like, we've been thinking this for so long, but we didn't think we could say it.
Yeah, totally. And even like moving away from less individualized posts and consolidating them into more carousel swipe throughs. Like, that's a great way to get higher engagement on content, but it's harder for a brand to justify when you invest in a shoot, you want to use all 15 of the photos because it's like choosing your favorite child. Like, you did 15 different looks. To have an expert come in and be like, sorry guys, this is being turned into a 10-page swipe through. The first has to be engaging and the last has to. You actually get way higher engagement because you're getting more saves because they're all condensed into one, opposed to it just becoming overwhelming.
Trying to extend it into more value.
Yes. It's about saving calories and increasing engagement and your community's involvement in your social platforms. Another piece that I wanted to touch on that I thought was interesting in another story that we have. So within this company, we were hired because they thought they were shadow banned. It turns out that they just have really shitty content on TikTok, and it's not shadow banned at all. They're just making content that nobody cares about. And what they had done was actually they had made a really bad mistake. And a lot of businesses make this mistake where they create an ad, like a traditional ad that you would be used to seeing in like the subway or like on TV. And they post it as an in-feed post on TikTok. And then they try to organically boost it. And they pay for real views. But the views mess up your algorithm because nobody actually wants to see that as an in-feed organic post. And it tells the algorithm that your content is not interesting to the consumers that are on TikTok because it's not an ad. It's supposed to be an organic in-feed post. And TikTok doesn't owe you anything. If you're boosting in-feed content that's an ad, you are going to hurt your algorithm. TikTok cares more about keeping your attention, your engagement within the app than keeping advertisers happy that are abusing its boosting offerings. There's a section on the app where you can create ads. That's not going to hurt your algorithm. But taking a backdoor approach to creating a post as an ad is going to hurt your profile as a user.
Mm-hmm. That's biblical.
Camille's 1412.
Camille's 1412.
So that was one interesting takeaway. And I've seen a few brands do this, and they just, like, the CEOs feel like they're owed something from the platform because they have big budgets, and they don't realize that,
like, this is actually what's counterintuitive. Like, it's an act of self-destruction.
It's so bad.
Take $100,000, have a platform you've built some followers on and engagement on, spend $100,000 boosting a sales ad in order to destroy everything you've done.
Yeah.
Because the engagement will be so poor that the algorithm will say, this place is garbage.
Put it that way. And then to hire experts, to pay them, to try to get them to tell you what you think, which is not what's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, they want to hear that they're shadow banned and, like, there's an easy way to get the engagement back up.
Yeah, just give us more money.
Like, stop shitting on the platform. Stop shitting on the algorithm. Nobody wants to watch your ad. Use it as an ad if you're going to make an ad.
But if you're going to do an ad as content, then make it a contest. Make it entertaining. Make it something that's really, that people will click on because they want. I'm always surprised at how little people give away.
I know.
When they have money.
Yeah.
Like, they'll spend $500,000 a quarter on ads, but they won't give away anything more than $3,000. Give away a $25,000 prize every month.
No, it would be
like,
way
that would
better
get,
for the brand.
Like,
You're so right.
It goes back to your other thing about how much people pay for clicks versus engagement.
It's so bad because you're such a smart thing to say, because you're so right, and I've never even thought about it that way either. But what's also so interesting about the way that brands see spend is that there's just also so many ways to create content that's ad-like, that's still not an ad. And they don't want to touch the creative, the outside of the box, because it's the ROI police. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be measurable right away. It's not a clear metric. They can't see things that allow the CFO to be happy at quarterly end to provide to their shareholders. And it's not growing your business. Another thing I also want to touch on is, I don't want to shit on the CMO. I want to hope that they're doing their best and they're the right person for the job. But I've also seen many poor decisions that are tied to growing the brand in community engagement style kind of pieces, like, you know, local partnerships or local sponsorships, or doing things that should be growing your brand with the local community, and it's a bad decision.
I think when we're talking CMOs, because I know we have a lot of marketing people who listen to the podcast, everybody is in a different situation. Like, if you're in a corporate environment, humans are risk adverse, so they'll lean towards avoiding risk rather than reward. So if there's a percentage that they can be embarrassed or it doesn't work, they're not going to do it. It depends what their boss wants, right? So you have to kind of look at, okay, because if you're in a corporate job, you got to pay the bills. You got to keep your job, right? So being dynamic and pushing for all this new stuff, and if you don't have people support you, it falls on your face. You're the one taken out, and they just return to mediocrity. So if you're that person who's struggling with that, you should probably try and get in your own business, or do something. But The question for people who are working in marketing is, who is your client? If you're a marketer servicing a company, understand what they want. If you're a marketing executive, most people are going to do what's in their career interests, not what's good for the company.
Well,
and that becomes a CEO issue. Then if that's the case, the CEO has to lead and allow the marketing to do what it needs to do. But I don't find a lot of the marketing executives have the freedom to really do anything interesting.
You're right. And so, but to go back to how to compare the socials that should be compared to the right social metrics, when you go to like the community, the engagement box, like a lot of businesses have budgets, right? So when you're deciding where to place your budget and spend, there's stuff that goes to promoting new products, and then there's stuff to promoting the brand. And that's where you're doing like the local community engagements, the community sponsorships, and so what. But it becomes difficult to audit the efficacy of the CMO or the manager when it's all being grouped into the sales, because often the ROI then at the metric is like, how well did the sales do of the product? Like they usually look at like growth metrics on social, like how many followers did you get? How many likes did you get? But if it's so sales focused, you're going to have stagnant growth. And because of that reality, it becomes difficult to also measure the success of your marketing person for doing the more of the brand awareness pieces. And that's where I really like this tool, or tip of breaking down your posts by comparing them within category. Mm-hmm. Because if your community style content that has its own line serial isn't performing by metrics that make sense online, like if people aren't commenting, if you're not getting more followers, if you're not increasing like tagged photos and DMs after doing a community event, then you're wasting your cash. And that is very difficult for a CEO to be able to audit, because there's all this movement, there's all this busy work. They think their marketing team is doing all of these things, but they're not able to dig down into strategy and if it's actually aligning with their goals and where they want to go, because their socials are flat.
You need to have an intelligent reflection on everything you're doing with your marketing dollars. Like how many people are still going to the same conferences, doing the same things? You know, is it making a change, as opposed to you need to spend your marketing dollars so that you engage with potential clients that in a way that builds a brand. But you have to like take it to the next order of thinking and say, okay, how am I going to engage with the clients in a way that makes them remember me?
Yeah.
Or remember the story, or remember the product, right? And too many people are just going through the motions, right? And it's the same thing on a repeat, and it's boring. It's why people leave relationships. It's why people leave brands.
Such an interesting point. And you're like leading into the seduction of branding, which is really its own. Is our next podcast. Total it's topic. It's going to be amazing.
Next podcast, how brand is a seduction. It's going to be hot and steamy and good.
It's sexy. But you're right. Like I guess I'm trying to help you navigate the so what. You know, what is your takeaway? How do you leverage strategy? Like, what do you learn from this? And every week we're being brought into businesses to see under the hood, to figure out how to help them make more money on socials. And the constant issues that we see are everybody wants to get better, but no one is willing to actually critically look at themselves. And a lot of the same things that we see happen are spending because you've spent there before without questioning why you're spending there. You're not measuring what makes sense in a category for proper comparison. So when you're spending on conferences versus when you're spending on promoting a new product or engaging with your community or doing a contest, those things should be analyzed in isolation, because you're not going to get any followers after you post ads. But if your marketing manager is helping you increase to 25 new followers after these community engagement posts, that's a good metric for you to know as the boss, versus if you're spending the same amount of money and you're getting no growth, that's something that where you need to cut. So if your metric is in investing in this to grow on socials, right?
Let me ask you a question. Just popped into my head, random thought here. The more we've looked at it, it looks like a lot of followers get stale.
Yeah.
Over a couple of years.
Yep.
Right? So you're like, oh, we've got this many followers, right? The question is how many are engaged. I wonder I wonder if you have an established brand, if you would get more impact by canceling the page and starting again.
Oof, no.
But just think of it, because if most of your followers are done, but you're a recognized brand or something, it just seems like the followers get stale. Would the algorithm kind of re-put you in, or you know what I mean? Is there anything about that?
No, it doesn't make sense for you to restart as a big social media brand. You just have to change your strategy. Like if you have 3 million followers, I get what you're saying. Like you're tying it more to Twitter, and Twitter can quite hurt you if you have old followers that aren't active, and you've restarted posting on Twitter. The algorithm won't push you to new people, and it will be harder for you to rebuild. That's true. But if you're a platform or you're a business that has a substantial amount of followers because you're quite established or well known, what you would benefit most from is a new strategy that's not more of the same. Mm-hmm. Because you have a large amount of people that are following you. Like the example for Twitter is more like a you or me, where you have a few hundred or you have 1,000 or 2, and they're probably no longer on the platform because Twitter had its moment 10 years ago. That's different than if you're a windows and doors company that's huge in the United States and you have 55,000 followers. Like you still have people in the
people who follow it, but they may have been old, but are they going to engage with you? Does the algorithm see that you have 55,000 followers, you put out a post and only 1,000 engage with you?
They're fake. Like if the followers were bought, and that was a strategy a few years ago, so you should know that as a business owner that some agencies were buying followings. Many were buying followings, and they were not real accounts. So the answer is yes. But if you still have a substantial number of followers that are real people and you improve your strategy so it's more engaging, that's the best course of action. But you were correct. There's a huge number of businesses that have no idea that their followers were purchased, and it doesn't matter what they do, it will hurt their algorithm. You can still fix it. It takes more time. It's worth it because it depends. It depends what you're dealing with. Like if there are 50,000 of them are bought, that's a problem. If there was 500 of them that was bought, that's a different problem. Mm-hmm. But you bring up a good point. You need to know if your followers are bought, because that would totally hurt your algorithm.
I just think you also want to know how many are engaging with your new posts.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's why engagement matters, but engagement matters on posts that people actually want to engage on. So content that's designed purely for sales is not going to get engagement. But content that's designed to get engagement, like if it's a contest where you're giving away $25,000 and nobody's engaging, then you probably have Russian bot followers, or you have a problem with your socials that needs to be relooked at.
All right. Takeaway for small to medium-sized businesses and semi-large businesses that want to have a better social media strategy.
To have a better social media strategy, you need to understand that socials have to be educational, engaging, and provide value. Content that's purely focused on selling does not work on social media. We use social media as an outlet to spend free time we don't want to be sold to.
Yeah, and the human brain is evolving to recognize cheesy attempts to pretend not to be selling. So like you can't just kind of try to cleverly masquerade a sales as an engagement. Like you have to have a level of thought into your content.
Yes. I typically recommend businesses have a social media strategy that's comprised of 4 pillars. 2 are educational pillars and 2 are community building engagement pillars. Mm-hmm. The 2 sales pillars are a hard sell and a soft sell. The hard sell, which is usually like a convince pillar, should be used the least. But it is important to have so that people do know that you sell something, but you sprinkle that in less. The secondary pillar is a soft sell, and this is more like an excite. So this is if you have awards. This is if you are being featured in a magazine. It's if you're doing a contest or a giveaway. It's still tied to your business, but it's not like
join our club to get first offerings, but you've made them like your tribe by providing educational and entertaining things before.
Yes, it's a soft sell. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 are like some kind of 2 engagement style pillars, like a relate. So like this is relatable style content that's connects you with the community. So these can be like memes, this can be trends, this can be things that like really build that connection between you and your user base.
Can I jump in? Like, this is where your team, the pedigree matters. And this is what sucks, because this is what I found in my life. You can hire people with titles, but there's the 1 out of 100 individual, and there's the 100 out of 100 individual. And the lower element are cheaper, right? So when you talk community engagement, a picture of you, at a fundraising event is an under 10 out of 100 engagement thing, right? Yeah. Like, nobody gives an F.
But most people don't but honestly, if you're someone that has a smaller budget and a smaller team, and you throw in like real photos of you out in the community, you will see that those will overperform.
Yes, but not just the kind of so humble to have offered. Like, take it a next level with like, make it a beautiful candid shot, have an engagement, have you doing something interesting, not a posing shot.
Yeah.
Not a posing shot by a check. Like,
okay, yes, like we're talking more right now social media pillars, right? So like, of the 4 pillars, the pillars that's relatable are photos that aren't graphic, text-based stock photos. Within the pillar of relate, there's levels of quality that are good, but if we're talking about someone that's only doing graphic ads that are all sales focused, having a photo of you doing something relatable in the community is going to go a hell of a lot farther for your engagement. And then the last pillar is, it depends on your industry. I like to use educate as kind of the more generic one. Educate doesn't work for every business on socials. Educate is important, though, to position you as subject matter expert or a thought leader or the top product in category. Educate is why people go to a business. Businesses who educate do perform less than a personal brand. So this is where a CEO should be a collaborator on Instagram to co-collaborate on education, because humans educate better than faceless brands. But brands that do educate why their product is great are still going to perform better on social, because to go back to that concept of your social is like a website, if I'm scanning to decide to choose you, those are those micro scripts or sound bites that I'm going to keep in my mind, so that when I do go to your website or if I do see your product in store, I'm going to decide to buy you over the competition. So the 4 pillars tend to be like a convince, a educate, a relate, and an excite. In order of the sell: convince, excite, relate, educate. These 4 pillars don't work for everyone. You should be creating your own 4 pillars for your industry and your goals. But the key metrics for the 2 sales pillars are brand awareness, so reach and impressions. The key metrics for the engagement content is brand awareness. So that's saves, likes, shares, and DMs. These are the most important metrics on social media. If people are sharing, saving, sending your posts to other people, and commenting, your content and your page is going to be ranked higher as a profile. Those metrics aren't tied to sales. They're tied to your brand being top of mind, which is what social media is all about. So changing your framework for being less sales focused and more engagement, providing value, educating, is how you're going to win online. What a